Hey everyone, welcome back to Voice Global. This is Pete Erickson. I hope you're having a great time. My next fireside chat is very special to me because not only is he a friend, he's a colleague in the industry, but he's somebody I think everyone should know if they don't know him already. Bradley Metrock, the CEO and founder of Score Publishing, among many other things that we're going to get into. Bradley, how you doing?
Pete, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me to be part of Voice Global. I think this is just a remarkable thing you put together.
Well, thank you. I think that, when we first conceptualized doing an online only conference last summer, we had no idea that maybe it would be a very necessary thing to be doing. But it's a labor of love. And as you know, community building is something that's really required in every industry. And some of us are called to do it. And I know you're one of those people as well. I want to get into that a little bit. Tell us, I guess, first off about Score Publishing. Tell us about that company, because I think that's maybe one of your core, maybe your core property, maybe your core company. Tell us a little bit about Score.
Yeah, so I'll keep it brief. So back in 2008, I started a completely unrelated business that was in the video game and retail entertainment space. I sold that in 2013. I had to remain available to the new ownership that bought that, and so I was sitting around doing nothing for a while, sort of like COVID-19 in a few ways. And so I started picking up new skills and I started learning some new things. And I had always been interested in publishing. I'm very interested in the democratization of publishing, the fact that for the first time, really, in the history of mankind, the gatekeepers that keep people from telling the stories they want to tell, unless they're going to make some person or entity some money in the process, they're being mitigated every day and they're being relegated to the sidelines every single day. So I'm fascinated by that. Started Score Publishing in 2014 as a company to create some interactive content. Apple had some big software at the time called iBooks Author, which I was just blown away by. Free, creates best-in-class content. And so we started creating some content for different companies, a lot of it white-labeled stuff. And soon we saw a real need to bring people together who were using the software. We saw that all the different groups that were using it didn't know all the other ones that were using it. So NASA had no idea that these educators were doing this super interesting stuff. And the educators had no idea that Southwest Airlines was doing this stuff. So, and on and on and on. So that's really where, I'd been part of events my whole life, but not really running them, sort of helping with them, but seeing the economics of them. And that really introduced us to the power of bringing community together. And a lot of great things happened from that. And from that, I knew that we needed to have a broader publishing conference. We went out and acquired Digital Book World when that opportunity presented itself. And a lot of the clients that we worked with on the interactive content side kept asking, 2016, 2017, what's up with voice? What's up with Alexa? And I said, stop asking.
Right.
Don't know, don't ask. And the more I said that, the more, of course, the question did get asked. And the more I found out, the more fascinated I became by that. And we held something called the Alexa Conference on the campus of Vanderbilt University. We piloted that in early 2017. We didn't really promote it very much because I wanted to see what happened without our help. And the room was full and we had people travel from overseas, which I thought they were joking and they weren't. That led us to a conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk that led to the start of Voice First FM. And it led to a whole lot more things. So we're wrapped up in all this, just like you, and we're fortunate for it. I'm a big believer in it. I'm a believer in a lot of the players in the space. I'm a believer in the use cases. I'm all in, just like you, and it's an exciting time.
Well, I really appreciate that quick background because I think one of the things that there's often a lot of work and a long backstory behind anybody who eventually launches, larger format conferences. These things start years ago, and oftentimes small and grow over time. And I really appreciate that. So today, Bradley, let's kind of fast forward. You started the Alexa conference. I went to your Alexa conference in 2018. Um, and maybe it was even 2019. You rebranded it Project Voice, and then you started to really grow that property. Tell us a little bit about Project Voice and that conference series.
Yeah, so it is the purpose of Project Voice. So the Alexa conference, the purpose of that was to highlight um, growth and interesting people doing interesting things in the Alexa ecosystem,
Right.
and the potential of the Alexa ecosystem. Well, as it turns out, Amazon and I butted heads on the name of that conference for a while, and we all got tired of that.
Yeah.
Um, and the timing was right just to have a broader event
Yeah.
anyway. And so thus began Project Voice,
Hmm.
um, and so the purpose of Project Voice is to juxtapose. Well, there's a couple of purposes of it. One major purpose of it is to juxtapose these major players side by side. So it's valuable to the marketplace to be able to see um, the use cases, the general acceleration, the verticals that they're in for Samsung, for Google, for Amazon, for Microsoft, for Apple. These are ones that have a lesser role, but still, it's useful to gain that perspective for people coming into the space, or even people who are in it. Um, Certainly, another role that it plays is we're seeing a lot of movement. um, I would argue as a deep function of Amazon and Google becoming this duopoly now, where they are true equals, whereas they might not have been a couple of years ago. Without going into a lot of boring detail, that opens up corridors for secondary players, groups like a SoundHound,
Yeah.
people who are groups like an Orbita, people who are doing things in specific lanes
Right.
that wouldn't have existed if it were just all Amazon all the time.
Right.
So Project Voice, you come to it, just like Voice Summit, you're going to gain valuable perspective on what's going on and real
Right.
time intel that will help your company.
Let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem. I think one of my observations has been over the last few years, and MoDev. For those of you, just real quickly, MoDev stands for mobile development. We started as a mobile development meetup 11 years ago. That grew and snowballed into a series of conferences, and then we expanded beyond mobile when really there was a requirement to to recognize cloud computing and DevOps and now the voice industry. But I definitely see some stark contrast with regards to the voice ecosystem versus previous ecosystems like mobile apps, and I think it's really related to probably the monetization engine that that runs the voice ecosystem. And would love your observations on that, Bradley. I know that as a community builder, uh, we really do rely on the fact that our industries have strong business opportunities and a strong foundational element there. And I see that it is there. It's just different than maybe the developer ecosystems that we've seen grown up in the past. And I'd love to get your input on that.
Sure. Yeah. My thought is that it's a couple of things. First of all, we sit at a critical inflection point right now. The pandemic has happened, and I don't mean that in any sort of political sense, like it's over. It's ongoing, and the things that we hopefully have taken away from that with voice is that voice is ready for prime time. You could argue whether it was in prime time already. I think there's good arguments to say that it was, but hopefully that's not something that recedes at any future point.
Right.
Hopefully, voice continues to be at the forefront of the thought of a lot of different types of businesses that maybe weren't thinking about it so much before.
Right.
But with apps, people forget it took a long time for apps to, there's sort of this thought that apps just boom,
Agree. Right.
up and running.
Yeah.
And that just was not the case. And we were fortunate to have a visionary alive at that time, with Steve Jobs, who cleared a lot of garbage out of the way for that to happen.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see what the analogs with voice are, because with Bezos, he's cleared a lot of garbage out of the way for Alexa to elevate voice to where it is.
Right.
And Amazon deserves a lot of credit for all leadership they've provided in numerous ways. It appears as if, Bezos, he's just as interested as he always was, but maybe he's got some other things competing for his attention these days. So will Amazon be able to keep the pressure on and to keep that level of urgency that puts them in that top 0.01% and helps drive everything forward like it's done the last couple of years? Or are they going to recede, let Google continue to catch them, let Samsung catch them, and then we'll find out where we are?
Right.
The answer to that question is really going to drive the answer to the monetization question. And but the good news is that, for people who are thinking about getting into voice, who are thinking about conversational AI, and they're wondering, is this worth it? Is this something that is worth it, financially as well as in every other way? And my answer, yeah, I'm biased, but good luck finding somebody who's not. My answer is sure. And the evidence for making that claim is when you look at the explosion of vertically oriented use cases. I could sit here for a long time and tell you about very interesting use cases in almost every single vertical.
Right.
And 2 years ago, maybe even 18 months ago, that was not the case. So I'm bullish. There's a lot of reason to be bullish. And when you look at some of the specific use cases people have come up with, and you conclude that will spur on even more use cases, there's a lot of reason to get involved.
There's so many examples. I think across all industries, you're right. I mean, you and I are close to this, right? So we're watching this era of hyper innovation in the voice tech space. One stat that really stuck out with me in my fireside chat with Janine Heck, who's the vice president of AI at Comcast, was that I think they had 2 billion voice intents on their remote control before COVID started in the past 12 months. 2 billion. That tells you something about the adoption of voice in our lives and in our homes. And, it's just kind of a telling statistic. But I agree with you. The ecosystem is alive and well. We both have so many pieces of anecdotal evidence there. And I think the sum is just the response that you've had with your series at Project Voice. And your book. And I want to bring that up because not only are you an organizer, you're an author as well. And I commend you and thank you for sending me the book. And I should have had it with me. I would be holding it up right now. My bad on that.
No.
Tell us about More Than Weather and Music. And I know I hear you've got a follow-on release coming out, or maybe even a couple more books coming out this year. Tell us about that.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. So, and thank you for letting us promote it. CES seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And, because it was a long time ago in COVID, dog days of COVID.
Right.
But I had heard the phrase Alexa can do, just weather, what do I use Alexa for? Weather and music.
Right.
And Brett Kinsella, VoiceBot.ai, came out with a lot of data showing, that's what most people use it for.
Yeah.
And so as I thought about, what I wanted to do, with Score Publishing, people always ask us, well, okay, show us something that you published. And, we publish usually 1 to 2 things a year that have our name on it, and there's some other things that don't. But I wanted to come up with something that showed just this rich developer ecosystem that Amazon has cultivated. because as I would argue, you could line up people at Amazon and they couldn't even tell you, all these things going on. And Amazon loved hearing that, by the way, when I told them that. And so we came out with the book, and it did well. It surpassed my expectations. I really didn't know what to think. I just knew, I did it for strategic reasons. I did it because it got a key point across that I wanted to get across, which is that voice is growing.
Yeah.
And I don't have to say anything. I don't have to make an eloquent argument. I can just say here and you understand.
Yeah.
So we do have a sequel coming out August 4th, More Than Just Weather and Music Volume 2, which will be another 200 use cases for the Amazon ecosystem. And then in November, we've got a similar book coming out for the Google ecosystem as well, highlighting just a number of actions that are cool that most people don't know about. So, yeah, it's what can I say? It's a purposeful endeavor, and it's fun because it gets you talking to a lot of folks who are passionate about what they're doing.
Right.
And it's a joyful exercise, but it's a strategic exercise too.
Well, I admire that. Knowing how busy conference organizing is, just how much time it takes to also know that you're able to put time into getting these books written, pulled together, and published is a testament to your bandwidth, sir. I have to say it's quite impressive. For those viewing this, how do they find you? How do they find out about Project Voice, your upcoming events this year and next year?
Yeah, so if you want to learn about Project Voice, you just go to projectvoice.ai. That's a website for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's not recommended. You can go to Be Metrock on there. You can reach out. I love hearing from people. No matter what it is you're doing, and my email address is just bradley@scorepublishing.us. So you can reach me there.
That's great. Well, Bradley, appreciate your time. Appreciate you being a part of Voice Global here, and appreciate all that you're doing to support this industry and grow this community. It's been a hugely rewarding endeavor for me as well, and getting to know so many people in this community. It's one of the nicest communities I've ever had to ever been involved with, and that includes you and so many others that are a part of it. Thanks again, and
Pete. Yeah, and thank you for putting together Voice Global. You had some prescience, in coming up with this, and it's vital now. I shudder to think where we'll be next year for something like this. Kudos to you for conceiving it and executing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, sometimes what's the saying? I'd rather be lucky than good. But sometimes you get lucky. But anyway, here we are. And Bradley, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you online. I'll see you on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, cheers.